From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I am your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. It's been a little while since we've come to you guys, at least consistently, and that's mostly on me. My son's fall baseball schedule got on top of me a little bit, but Dibes, Ryan, and Mark, they kind of kept the show going when they could, and mostly Ryan. Mark bails out on everything. Asked me why there was no chalk talk this. No, I'm just kidding. And tonight, Dibes is gone. Unfortunately, Dibes is out sick, but we're going to get into week 13 of the college football season. I'm joined by the normal co-host. We've got Ryan Reese. Give him a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be talking some college ball again. It feels like forever.
It does. It seems like it's been a long time. Also joined by Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. Mark, how you doing?
Good to be back. Yeah, it's been way too long since I was trying to pick a prospect, and I was like, who have they covered? Since I've been on. It's been too long. Been on the road. Happy to get back at it. It's full steam ahead for NFL draft talk at this point. I know it's still NFL season and college football season. The Eagles are 8-2, yada yada yada. But it's full steam ahead. I'm already on the PFF mock draft simulator messing around a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. We're like, it's been a while, but we're ready to hit the ground running. We're going to be more consistent. Oh, by the way, next week's Thanksgiving, so who the heck knows what's going to happen. But you're going to get an episode this week for sure. Hopefully we can get you one out next week too. It always gets crazy around the holidays. But as we normally do on the show, we're each going to give you an Eagles prospect to watch on Saturday. As you watch the game, somebody that maybe the Birds could have some interest in. And then we're going to preview our game of the week. This week, it is number 5, Indiana, at number 2, Ohio State. But we will start off with some prospect profiles. Mark, why don't you lead us off? Who do you have this week?
I've got wide receiver Xavier Restrepo from Miami. And I don't know if the Eagles will be looking at a wide receiver. You just made the trade in the offseason for Jahan Dotson to be your third receiver, presumably for more than 1 year. But it's not like that is necessarily lit the world on fire. Xavier Restrepo is an interesting guy, I think, potentially for the Eagles. He's 5'10", so definitely a little undersized, probably best used as a slot guy. Last year, he's had a pretty long career there at Miami, but last year, for his first big year, he was 13 yards per catch. He was kind of more of a slot guy, going to get you underneath routes, get you first downs on third down. This year, with Cam Ward and all the explosiveness that he's brought to the Miami offense, he's exploded, and he has less catches, and he's making definitely less catches per game, but they're going way farther. He has way more explosive catches. His yards per catch is up to 17 yards per catch. He's actually the leading receiver in Miami University history, a college that has had some definite good wide receiver play there over the years. So Restrepo is a guy who's played a lot of football there, caught from multiple different quarterbacks, not necessarily great ones before Cam Ward got there either. So he's a guy who I think is at the next level. Pretty safe bet to at least be a very solid player.
All right. And when you've got, a duo like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, solid is good enough. And, hopefully that's what the Eagles, I think, we're hoping for in Jahan Dotson. We'll see how that plays out, but you can keep an eye on Xavier Restrepo.
He's being projected like a day 2 guy as well. So it's not like a first round pick.
Yeah. All right. Ryan, where are you headed with your Eagles target for the week?
So I'm actually heading to where we're going to be going for our game of the week. And that's Indiana. And I'm going to the edge, Mikhail Kamara. This is a guy who came over from JMU, obviously Indiana, big story. They got the head coach from JMU, from James Madison. And half the team kind of comes with him. But, Kamara actually kind of had his breakout season last year with James Madison here at his final season there. 52 tackles, 17 and a half tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. And he is part of the reason why that Indiana defense this year is doing so well. And that's the reason why we're going to be talking about him. This is a guy that is he's 6'1", about 260. He's a guy who's just violent on the line. He has great hands, able to kind of counter offensive linemen, consistently wins the initial contact. And like I said, kind of has that violent hand to kind of get past and get to the quarterback. This is a guy that's, great off of, to rush the passer, to, help in the run game. It's got an absolute motor. And this is a guy that's going to play until the whistle. He seems like he's able to kind of fit into multiple alignments, whether it's stand up, a hand in the dirt kind of guy, and has a really good dip to go with him. And it's really good to see, a team like Indiana, who I don't think anybody really expected anything. Their basketball team, their football is certainly coming around, and it's really mostly part due to that defense being so solid and Kamara being one of the leaders on that defense. This is a guy that's probably going to be, anywhere from, late day 2, early day 3. But I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of shut up boards once the combine comes by. So,
all right. You see, this is just bad podcasting by me because I knew that was your prospect. I knew that was our game of the week. It would have been a perfect segue. And instead I asked you for yours first. And that's just bad podcasting. I've been out of the host chair for a few weeks,
we'll forgive
a little
you.
Rusty. We'll keep me on a snap count and we'll work back into it here.
Oh yeah. It's all good, but I love what I see from Kamara, and like I said, the Eagles, obviously the edge position is going to be a very important position for the Eagles come draft day, for all days. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with a couple of edge.
Yeah, edge is a place that I definitely think you can see the Eagles go. I mean, Brandon Graham, maybe he plays another year, but he's still he's nearing the end. You got to have replacement. Nolan Smith has come on lately, and so hopefully he can continue to build on that. Josh, I keep wanting to say Josh Huff. Bryce Huff has been a disappointment, but he's also been injured the last few weeks, and so you don't know what you're going to get out of him. I certainly think the Eagles could look at day 1 edge rusher. In fact, I'd say that's probably the most likely place they go on day 1, unless they finally get the replacement for Lane Johnson they've been trying to get for half a decade now. But so I'm going to go to edge rusher 2. And this isn't a guy that I think is a day 1 guy. I think he's probably a day 2 guy, but edge rusher Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss.
I don't know.
You think he's going to get into round 1?
I think he'll sneak in.
Yeah, he might. Things change a lot. And I mean, right now he's kind of looks like on consensus boards and stuff, he's around 2. I haven't put pen to paper and tried to rank guys yet, but maybe fringe round 1. It reminds me of Felix Anudike-Uzomah a little bit. And he had that big rise. He ended up going back at the first round, right? I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's went well either.
No.
I don't think that was a good pick.
No, I don't either. But he did come up the boards. I think it's a similar profile. So he's a 4-star recruit. He committed to Florida, where he played from 2020 to 2023 before he transferred to Ole Miss for the 2024 season. His most productive year was last season when he had 7 sacks, but he's already surpassed that this season with 9.5 sacks. He's 6'4", 255, so he's not a huge guy. He is a fluid mover who's got really good flexibility and bend around the edge. He rushes from a 2-point stance or a 3-point stance. So you can put a hand in the dirt. You can have him standing up as an outside backer to rush. He's got a really good spin move. High IQ player. He's a good tackler. He doesn't have a lot in the way of a power rush. Adding speed to power would be a huge asset for his game, because right now he's pretty predictable. He's going to try to bend the arc, or he's going to start to do that and he's going to spin back inside. And so if you can only do those 2 things, good NFL tackles, regardless of the fact he's got 9.5 sacks this year, NFL tackles are going to be able to shut that down. And so he needs to develop some more into his game. And he is undersized. I mean, this guy, he's 20 pounds heavier than Nolan Smith, so he's not that undersized, but he is undersized for typical at the position. And I think there's strength and power issues there. It's why you don't see a good speed to power move. I think he struggles to set the edge into the run game at times. And so I do think there's a lot of room for improvement, but there's also a lot of raw athleticism there. And we've certainly seen guys vault into the first round with less athleticism. And so he's got that first round upside. We'll see, how he runs at the combine and things like that, because that tends to make guys shoot up draft boards more than it should. But right now, I think he's probably like a fringe day one, more likely top of day two edge rusher who's going to fit best in like an odd front scheme, which is why I think he could make a lot of sense for the Eagles as they like to rush those guys from stand-up positions on the edge. So Princely, Umanmielen, Ole Miss, you can keep an eye on him. What are your guys' thoughts on him?
Absolutely love Ole Miss. Honestly, you tell me anybody from Ole Miss right now, and I'm going to be all in. There's something about that team that I just really like. Umanmielen is one of them. Obviously, Nolan and another. But yeah, they're fun to watch. Honestly, that defense. And then of course, my favorite player is Trey Harris. But yeah, love Ole Miss, love that defense. Umanmielen, I think, like I said, I think he'll sneak into the back end when it all said and done.
All right. So you guys both think he'll end up going back into day one?
Yeah. I think it looks like I feel like edge rushers get pushed up in general. Well, once we get to draft time, and I think that's going to happen for sure with a guy like who has a ton of sack production there. Yes. I mean, 7 sacks last year, already 9.5 now. Still has 2 more regular season games and probably some playoff games as well. So he'll definitely add to that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan Smith went in the first round, and he didn't have 9.5 sacks his entire college career, right?
That's it. Yeah.
No, he did. He had 11.5. He had 11.5. So
close though.
I'll never forget when Nolan Smith that he was. I forget who made the comp, but DeAndre Hopkins as defensive end. What was the comp I read on the one site for Nolan Smith, and that's always stuck with me.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
So. All right, well, let's get into our game of the week breakdown. This would have been a perfect segue, and again, I ruined it. Sorry about that. But it is number 5 Indiana at number 2 Ohio State. Ohio State is favored by 12.5 points in this game. It is a noon game on Saturday on Fox. Indiana is undefeated, although their most impressive win was probably 2 weeks ago when they beat a 5-4 Michigan team 20-15 at home. Now, we could point out they did have a 17-3 lead at halftime, but they have not played a difficult schedule. They are top 2. These are the top 2 teams in the country in EPA per play. Ohio State's 1, Indiana's 2. They are second and third, respectively, in net success rate. They are second and third, respectively, in net yards per play. But none of those metrics are opponent adjusted. Ohio State's played Oregon. They've played Penn State, both of which are top 5 teams. They beat one. They lost to the other. But I think it was just a point, if I recall correctly. Indiana has a new coach who has led them to a double-digit win total for the first time in program history. Indiana was 3-9 last year. Of course, you can turn a program around very quickly with the portal, like Mark mentioned earlier. Mark, what are you looking for in this game? What do you expect to see on Saturday?
Yeah, it's become I don't know if you guys have seen kind of the war on Twitter between SEC country and the rest of college football Twitter. And it's very funny because it's very clear that the 10-2 or the 8-2 right now SEC teams are lined up hoping and praying that Indiana loses this game by 31 plus or, comes in and gets absolutely blown out, because then you start to make the argument, did a one-loss Indiana really play anybody? Are we really going to just put in a one-loss Indiana right into the playoff? I really see both sides of the argument. It's really one of those arguments that it seems like everybody who has a take is so staunch and firm in their beliefs. And I look at both arguments and I'm like, yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. Like with Indiana, you mentioned the Michigan game. It's funny because that's probably maybe the best team that they've beaten. But you look at the teams that they were beating before that, they were pummeling them. Like, they were beating them 49-10. Ryan Coyle from The Gambler and I have been, hammering Indiana's spread pretty much every week. He's bought like multiple Barstool Indiana shirts about Coach Siggs with the Marlboro logo, and we're all in on Indiana. I'm all in on Coach Siggs. But at a certain point, it starts to be about the Jimmies and Joes and not the X's and O's. And if you just look at the blue chip ratio, I think is what they call it. It's an on three stat that they put out there, and they take your starting players and all these players who have played time throughout the year, and they count how many of them are 4 or 5 stars. Indiana's rate is on such a different planet than the other teams competing for the playoff right now. And it feels like this is the game where that probably catches up to them finally. And I'm not betting this one. The spread, I think you said, is 11.5, 12, something
12 and a
around
half.
12 and a half. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to stay away from that one. I think it's probably right around that number. Ohio State wins by in between 1 to 2 touchdowns, if I had to guess. I don't think Indiana's a live dog to win the game. I just think Ohio State has way too much talent for that to be the case. And I have a lot of respect for Indiana. But if you made me say right now who's missing the playoff, because there's very clearly the Big 12 champion, ACC champion, Group of 5 champion are going to take 3 spots. And there's 10 teams for those 9 other spots very clearly right now. And if you made me guess who's the 10th team that's going to get left out, I'd probably make a guess that it's going to be Indiana.
All right. So Mark's got Ohio State in this one. At a certain point, at a certain point, the talent gap has to catch up. But I feel like anytime I start to say something like that, I just have flashbacks to the Fiesta Bowl when Boise State knocked off OU. And then I don't even want to talk about college football anymore. So it gets me into a depressed headspace. So scars from my childhood. But Ryan, where do you see this game going?
Do you also hate the Statue of Liberty as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hate all things. I was so mad. When, what was the running back's name? Zabransky?
Wasn't it something simple? It was like Brian Johnson or something, wasn't it?
I was thinking his last name was like Zabransky or something. But when he gets the Statue of Liberty play, and then he proposes to his cheerleader girlfriend. I was so mad. I was like, that's so stupid. He should have done that before the game. I was just so mad. But anyways, we don't need to rehash all that. I don't even know why I brought it up. Ryan, talk to me about Indiana, Ohio State, not Boise State, OU.
Wait, time out, because
it was Ian Johnson, by the way.
Sorry. Yeah, I wanted to. I was trying to answer as my stream froze out. I'm like,
I had it. I knew I had it in there somewhere.
Okay, it must have been the quarterback's name then. I'm going to look it up. Zabransky. That's the last name I had in my head.
Jared Zabransky.
Anyway, outside of Boise State, listen, you're right. Obviously, that's the beauty of college football, is a team like Indiana who, let's again, I'll say it again, nobody saw coming. Can knock off a big team like Ohio State, but I think Mark is right. Mark said it perfectly that this is finally going to catch up to them. They're finally playing a team here where the talent difference is going to be immensely different than the teams they've played before. And listen, theoretically, this Indiana team is practically made up of half of James Madison players. Again, so they're taking all of these, Division 2 players and kind of throwing them into the Big Ten here. So there's a bigger difference than I think people realize. But listen, it's been a great story. Indiana certainly has, stayed undefeated, beaten some teams. They caught Michigan on clearly a down year. So I just think, this 12.5, I personally think they're gonna cover that easy. I've seen Indiana play this year, and again, I don't think you match up well with either one of these teams. Obviously, Indiana's offense, their passing game has been really good, but Ohio State has a really good pass defense, and on the defensive side of the ball for Indiana, their pass rush has been, obviously, I just talked about Kamara. the pass rush has been kind of their bread and butter, and they're going to face a pretty decent offensive line there, and a quarterback that wants to get the ball out to his playmakers. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, if you look at somebody like a Jeremiah Smith just having an absolute day against Indiana and their pass defense. But yeah, I sadly think that the Indiana run comes to an end. And Mark, I'm on the side of I'd rather go SEC. I'd rather go obviously, I've been talking about Ole Miss. I'd rather go Ole Miss than Indiana, especially if they're going to get the breaks beaten off of them by Ohio State. So.
Yeah, I actually think, and it's funny, I'm a Notre Dame fan from PA. You'd think I would fit all of the criteria to be one of the people yelling and crying about the SEC getting
Right.
too many teams in and getting too much love. And I'm kind of the exact opposite. Like, I think we know that the SEC has better teams. Like, the seventh best team in the SEC is like Texas A&M potentially, whereas the seventh best team in the Big Ten is what, Illinois? Like,
Yeah.
it's there's a big difference between the level of team, and obviously teams like Texas have gotten lucky with their schedule. Like, they lost to Georgia, and besides that, they haven't played any of the top SEC teams until Texas A&M next week. There have been teams that have escaped the SEC gauntlet. Go look at, like, Indiana's going to be right there with one loss. Georgia, who in the college football rankings just was ranked 10th, go look at
Plays
their
everybody.
schedule. Like, they played Clemson, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas. Like, what are we doing? Like, they should be in with 3 losses, let alone 2 losses. They should be ranked as like the 5th best team right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
but it's a mess. This 12-team playoff it came in the perfect year where there's clearly more teams than 12 that are going to be at least eligible. I don't know if eligible is the right word, but have a real case.
Considered for it. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be. Man, I'm looking forward to the selection day and just how they're going to make the decision because the back four, I think, teams could go so many different ways, as it stands now, and there's still a lot of football to play. So,
yeah, I've always said, like, no matter how big you make the playoff, there's going to be a debate about like the last spot. Yeah. I'd rather have it. I wanted it bigger than 4 way back when, but it's like I'd rather have the debate about 4 than 2. I'd rather have the debate about 12 than 4. There's a certain point where I just don't want it any bigger, but I'm really excited to see, get another week or so, another week for sure, 2 weeks behind us, and see how that playoff picture looks. So, and however it looks, we'll be here to break it all down and kind of give you guys the playoff picture as we head into it. So, I think that's going to about do it. Does either of you have anything else you want to fire off about this game before we get out of here?
No, I think we said our piece. And listen, I hope Indiana makes it a game, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Tangentially, just to the playoff conversation I brought up there, I can't believe I'm the one saying it with the Notre Dame hat on my head. All these SEC teams are coming after Indiana and Penn State. Notre Dame's sitting there with a loss to Northern Illinois, and no one's even bringing them up as a team that could get cut out of the conversation. I don't get it. I know that they've blown out every team they've faced since then, and they have some good wins. They beat Texas A&M. I get it. They lost to Northern Illinois. Like, nobody has as bad of a loss in this conversation as Notre Dame does. I'm shocked they're not being left out.
Well, everybody's just assuming that they're going to lose to Army this weekend, so...
If they lose to Shane Half, if they lose to Army this weekend or USC next week, I will be furious. I am so mad already that because I gave up on this team when they lost to Northern Illinois, and now here we are. They're the number 6 team in the country, and I just have to like snap back in and believe again. And if they just lose to Army or USC, I will be inconsolable.
I have to root against him, and it'll be the second time because I just can't not root for the triple option when I see it. So I rooted for Navy. Of course, that ended predictably. This one probably will too, but I'll definitely be watching that one because it's a throwback to my favorite offense that you just almost never see at a high level anymore. But
I think Army is better than Navy. Their quarterback, Daly's a legit, like he can scare you a little bit with the throw. so that makes the running that much more dangerous. I would still take Notre Dame minus 14.5. They've been so good against the spread. They've just been putting it on teams. So I do think Notre Dame kills them. I'm more concerned about the USC matchup in LA, sitting at 10-1, basically just win and you're in the playoffs. I've been here before.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the Armchair Scouts. If you enjoyed the show, be sure you hit that subscribe button so you get all the shows on the Eagles Pin Pull Network feed. 8 shows a week, long form shows, 5 daily updates in the morning from Phil. More content than you could possibly consume. Check it out. You're going to be driving for Thanksgiving next week. You're going to be like, I wish I had something to listen to about sports so I didn't have to listen to my kids fight in the back seat. And just remember this moment. You could have had hours of content queued up on your phone. So just go hit subscribe. Help us out. You can check us out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. What just happened behind Mark? Whoa.
I put up thumbs up and we got crazy. We got, whoa!
Why can't I do it?
I have Mark's on a phone, right?
Yeah.
Is that an iPhone thing?
Yeah, it must be.
Oh,
It must be.
be.
Shout out to StreamYard.
Yeah. Right?
I had no idea that was a thing that would happen.
Thumbs down.
Give us a thumbs down. Let's see what happens.
Thumbs down? No, nothing.
Fire
Do I
behind.
have to hit the right spot on the screen?
He put the thumbs down and the Notre Dame logo on his hat got bigger.
Oh, that was mean. They're not giving me the fireworks now. Oh.
Yeah.
No.
You gave it the thumbs down, StreamYard. You angered StreamYard. It thought you didn't like that anymore. But that was really cool. That was totally unexpected. I forgot where I was. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. And we'll catch you guys next week for another episode of the Armchair Scouts.